You're listening to a very special extended interview edition of Audible Sounds on 88.3 WRCT. And that means you've come here on your own, so thank you, listener, for supporting the show both online and off. So let's get to the interview. This week I sat down with Nate Cross from Astral Spirits, the Austin-based free jazz label. I personally have been a fan of Astral Spirits for a number of years now, so I was pretty excited for this one. Nate and I get into genre tags and the meaning of certain genres specifically. We also get into what Nate describes as the heavy sounds in free jazz. Here now is my interview with Nate Cross. Hello, and welcome to yet another Audible interview. I've sat down with Nate Cross from Astral Spirits. How you doing today, Nate?
Doing great. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, for the uninitiated, can you tell us a little bit about your label? How would you describe it to people?
It changes, I guess. I started Astral Spirits just about 10 years ago. Next year will be my 10-year anniversary, which seems wild.
Congratulations.
Thanks, yeah. I always called it like heavy sounds. The new heavy sounds of free jazz was like the tagline I started with, I guess. So it is very improv based, but I feel like it shifts and it's more eclectic and like experimental, a little wider ranging lens of improv and just weird music in general.
Nice. The name of our show is Audible Sounds. We like to celebrate the weird and the worldly. I've been a fan of Astral Spirits for about, I guess, like 5 or 6 years now, which is crazy to think about. So you said the heavy sounds. What does that mean to you when you say heavy?
I think what I wanted that to reflect was, I always wanted to, when I started, I come from more of like a DIY background as a musician, as a person, and I think I wanted that to reflect sort of the DIY or underground or punk rock, for lack of a better term, side of free jazz. Not necessarily in terms of just like sheer volume and tenacity, but more in the like underground weirdo sort of thing, I guess. That's kind of what I wanted it to say.
Very cool. And you brought some weirdos to listen to today. So thank you. We can start with Vertical Motion.
I wouldn't call, they aren't quite as weirdo, I would say. I mean, they are. They're great. But Anthony Davis obviously is an incredible pianist who's been around for a while, and it's a real trip to get to release this record for him. And it's the first piano trio record with just piano, bass, and drums that he's released. But more importantly, it is like a group. Like Kyle Model and Kiel Nordesen are incredible musicians, and this song is actually a tune written by Kyle, so it's really good.
All right, here's Vertical Motion from... Okay, I'm going to completely undercut this entire segment. One of the things that it is equal parts fascinates me and frustrates me about Astral Spirits is when I find something I like, if I ever need to dig it up, it's always just a list of everybody involved, which I appreciate as somebody who's, always involved in other people's projects. So, is this a collective? What is this album? How does this album come to be?
It's kind of Kyle's thing that he put together. But yeah, it's a collective. Like because Anthony Davis is real well known, they didn't want to be like an Anthony Davis record because it was a group. Like Kyle brought songs, there's a lot of free improvisation. So I would say it is a collective. I think that's a good term for you.
So here is Vertical Motion from Anthony Davis and Friends.
and that was Vertical Motion. We talked a little bit about how people are credited on many of projects. I noticed that's very consistent across Astral Spirit. One of the things I kind of appreciate about just internet culture and internet music is you don't have a guy on top who gets all the credit. What is the process like for you whenever you get one of the, like, an album or an EP, and you've got all these logistics, all these names, these credits? Like, what is the process like for you when you're putting it all together?
Usually, yeah, I mean, it is kind of like you're saying. Like, I've always been a person that's liked more information. I love like reading through liner notes and finding out all the people involved. But usually, in a project, it'll be generally like one person is kind of the person who's reaching out and I'm working with back and forth. But I always make sure, when we're getting, especially to the artwork in particular, and the thing that with the internet that makes it somewhat difficult too is like, with streaming and digital distro, like if it's 3 names, like how is that listed? How are they linked to each of their Spotify accounts or whatever? And I just want to make sure, yeah, that, like we were saying, like credit goes to those who did it. And it can be a challenge, but a lot of times that's why these groups of ad hoc people will come up with their band name. And again, that creates some issues because you might not know the name of the band, but you know the people in it. So it's all good and bad.
You seem to have you have a lot on your Bandcamp at this point. You've got people from all over the place.
Mhm.
So I guess my question is, how do you go out and you find artists? Do they approach you? How did this all get started?
A little of both. It kind of started from an idea of like wanting to do shows here in Austin, Texas, where I'm based, and bringing people into town. And then the idea was, well, I'll bring people to town and maybe I'll get like a cassette, like a live recording of something that might not be like a album they want to release, but a little artifact, and then they can come and we can do the show. And it didn't really work out that way, and eventually the label formed through another label, Mafas Press, who helped us get my feet under me and get going. And then I just knew a few folks who kept introducing me to folks, and some of it comes from my day job stuff in working in music production, where like I worked Pitchfork Festival as a stage manager for that and met
Fabulous.
Mike Reed, who helps run that, and make Dave Rempus and Tim Stein. There are so many amazing Chicago folks I met through that, and it's just kind of snowballed from there.
Next up, we had Artifacts. Can you tell us a little bit about them? This album?
Yeah. So Mike Reed, it's a trio with Mike Reed on drums, Tamika Reed on cello, and Nicole Mitchell on flute. And they've done a few records before this last one that I did for them, and they're just incredible. AACM from Chicago related, and picked this because I love this record. It's almost out. If you haven't bought it, please go buy the record. It's almost gone. But also Nicole has, I have a new record with Nicole Mitchell and Alexander Hawkins coming soon, and there's a new Mike Reed record. And hopefully again, I'll work with Tamika. They're all incredible and just an amazing unit. So, and it's kind of, I would say this isn't as heavy in terms of, heavy free jazz, but it's really, really great.
Fabulous. Well, here's Soprano Song by Artifacts. was Soprano Song by Artifacts.
I think I liked heavy too, going back to I like the word heavy because it does have a lot of different meanings. And Artifacts as a group is a heavy group. Like Nicole, Tamika, and Mike are incredible players. So yeah.
This next one, Misty Morning by Sunada.
It shows the other side, I would say, of Astral Spirits in the more experimental. And this one, I really, really love this record or cassette that came out. And it came from just a blind demo, which I still kind of love getting. And I get a lot of them, so it's hard to listen through them all. But I love that every once in a while there'll just be a blind demo that comes through, and I'll hear it, and I'll just be like, "What is this? This is amazing!" And kind of, I've always had a love of ambient and more experimental stuff like that. So hit that itch.
Cool. Do you have any vetting process for a blind listen?
Usually I really do still try my best to listen to a little bit of most everything that comes through. It can be hard, but I really try. And usually what I'll do is if something piques my interest a little bit, I'll move it to a list that I have of like, okay, these are interesting. And it's hard for me to do them because I already do so many releases and I'm trying to do less because I just can't keep up the pace. But they moved to a list. I'll listen to it again in a little bit, see how it goes. And then from there, I have a few friends, Gabriel, who runs Cow Arts, and some others that'll usually, I trust their judgment and I'll be like, hey, listen to this. Does this make sense? Is this good? And kind of get a second opinion from a trusted source.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, here's Misty Morning by Sunada. And we're back. You talked about your process for finding artists. My process is a little less sophisticated. I usually just pick whatever has the best artwork. And I honestly, like, no joke. I think that's what really attracted me to Astral Spirits very early on. Like the kind of abstract art style for most of especially a lot of the earlier stuff. Is that all from a single artist? Is there how would you describe that style?
It's kind of been a line of a handful of folks that I've worked with, and it was something that was I meant to do it from the start because I feel like it is important. It's not necessarily the first thing I look at in music, I guess, but it is. With so much information out there now, you need something that just grabs. Like if they don't know what it is, they don't know who Artifacts is. It needs to attract them to it, right? Mm-hmm. So it was meant to be that way from the beginning. And my friend Mason McPhee helped me kind of design the logo and kind of the initial batch. And then from there, I've just been like really blessed with working with amazing people. Jaime Zuberza from Austin's done a ton of stuff. Lately, I've been working with Dylan McConnell and Daryl Norson. I've just Robert Beatty. Like I've gotten really lucky to work with people I love, and I do want it to have. The fun part about it to me, or the cool thing I think, is that it does have sort of a through line through it all. Like even though I've worked with a lot of people, it still feels like Astral Spirits. Even though it's not quite as formulaic as it was when I first started. It still has that feel to me. And I hope it does to others.
Moving right along, we've got Human Abstract by Drew Gardner. This is from the cassette Return. So we've had tape producers on in the past. Would you say that's the best way to consume this music? What is it about tapes for you?
For me, I always liked tapes. And with my age when I was coming up, it was right around that time that Emeralds and a lot of that Ohio scene kind of was coming around, and Wolf Eyes. So I saw it as this very DIY, very experimental style. And it was just the thing I don't know. I loved free jazz. I thought it had this like DIY punk rock feel to it in the sound, and I just never seen jazz on cassette tape before, or rarely, I should say. Not never, but rarely. And I love tapes, and I was like, this seems like a good idea. It was cheap. The main thing being, it's a cheap and easy way to get things off the ground. Yeah, it just kept snowballing from there. So I still think tapes sound good. They have their own quality to them. Not everyone agrees with that, and I don't. Well, it wasn't meant to get into like a format wars kind of thing. And I know a lot of folks that listen to jazz can be particular and prefer their format over others. And I've tried to do things across the board on cassette, CD, LP, digital. But I have a particular fondness for tapes from growing up, in the 80s and 90s, buying singles. I just love them, and I always will.
And I hope you all love it too. So here's Human Abstract by Drew Gardner. You're listening to Audible Sounds, and if you're just joining us, we've sat down with Nate Cross from Astral Spirits. So the next track, I don't know if I can actually say this on the radio, but that's a regular hurdle for me. But our next track is Orgasm, off of Good Days by Chicago Underground Quartet. It's a noisy orgasm.
Well, it's a cover song. It's a Alan Shorter piece that they're covering. The brother of Wayne Shorter, late brother of Wayne Shorter. And it's a great tune, yeah. It kicks off this record. And this record was, the Chicago Underground Quartet record was incredibly special to me because it was, like, to me, it was, I shouldn't say the pinnacle, because hopefully there'll never be a pinnacle and things will always get better. But at that time, being able to work with them was like a dream come true. I've been a fan of their work since the Chicago Underground Quartet record on Thrill Jockey in 2000. That one blew my mind when I was a kid. And so getting to know Rob and Chad and Jeff from the band has been just incredible. They're like my heroes and idols, and now some of them are friends. And so this was a real pinnacle for me to be able to do that record and put it out. And I'm real happy with it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
next track is Love If It Is So by Marie Elena Silva off of the upcoming LP Dolce. So this one struck me as a little different from the rest.
Yeah, this one's coming up pretty soon. It's a split release with the label Big Ego Records out of LA. And I've loved that label and studio. That's actually where the Chicago Underground Quartet record was recorded. And Chris Schlarb, who runs Big Ego, he produced that record as well for me. So that's kind of the first time we had met and interacted. And then we've done a few split releases. I did a release for Chris too before this. And so Maria had put out a record a couple years ago, Eros, on Big Ego, that I loved. And she's toured through Austin a couple times. I've been lucky to see her and Scott play. And it is a departure, but I don't know. There's something about it to me, like when I listen to her music, sure, it has vocals, there's like songwriting in it, but to me it's not. It still feels within the Astral Spirits world. I don't know. And I can see why it does seem different, but I just really love her music. There's a lot of subtle improvisation, and this record in particular, when she made this, it has Mark Ribot, the amazing guitar player that everyone knows.
Famous.
And Stephen Hodges is on there, Carrie Frank, a bunch of amazing players. And so when Chris told me that he was making the next Maria record, I was interested. And then when he told me Mark Ribot was on it, I was like, oh, wow.
That's a hell of a guess.
Yeah, and I was like, well, this sounds like a good split release. And then he sent me a couple of tracks, including this song, and I just, yeah, it's unbelievable. It's so good. And and it feels good to try and change things up, surprise people, right? Like I think I've only had like song vocals on one or two other records. And so it felt like a good time to just, let's see. And I love the record, so yeah.
Fabulous. Well, here's Love If It Is So.
Affluent gestures are the muse for love if it is so. And even if they were, their tiredness bears no fruit. Broad climb, stiff-necked attribute. I salute you. Perfect angles get bent at the sight of me. With a shimmering wave I collect his valuable symmetry. Leveled this castle made of sand, pouring water from the sea. This is love.
And we're back. You mentioned there's not a lot of I guess vocalist is not wouldn't be correct, but more lyricist.
Yeah,
Or
I
not
think
so
it's good.
present. This is not one of the tracks you included, but one of my personal favorites is "Pocket Full of Bees."
Oh yeah,
And that whole it's nothing but just but vocals and just it sounds like somebody just doing vocal warm-ups, and I find it very hypnotic and fascinating.
yeah.
Um
Man, Leah Cole and Macy Stewart, they are incredible, and they are playing their instruments too, but with the vocals, and yeah, they're amazing. I really hope to do another record for them one day, definitely.
how would you I one of the things we love to discuss is just genre tags on Bandcamp and how completely wonderfully nonsensical they can be. uh and I see vocal jazz comes up a lot. um can you can you what does that mean to you? Is it's I'm sure it's more than just scatting, but like what is
I mean,
uh
it would depend on who it is. I could see that tag going the wrong way very quickly and running right into smooth jazz. But there's a lot of vocalists. I think Yacht Blanc. That's kind of what I think of. And Mason Leah. That's a great example of that. Like they use vocals in, I don't even know how to say it exactly, but in the style that it is just another instrument. It's not scatting. It's not lyrics. It's none of this like cliche stuff, but sort of blending it in. And even actually another really good example of that is the Jessica Pavone ensemble.
I was in a pragmatic space that was as an old house.
Which she's done. I've done a couple records with her. And in that group, it's a quartet or a trio, but they also use voice with the string stuff to create this kind of eerie and beautiful stuff. So, I don't know. Whenever I hear the two words vocal jazz together, it gives me a little anxiety. But
really why
well,
is that?
I don't know. I guess I just shouldn't say that.
It doesn't adequately describe what
It doesn't. I guess when I hear vocal jazz, I tend to think of like show tunes or standards or stuff along those lines. Instead of when there is improvisation with vocals on top, I don't think of them as vocals, I guess is a better way to put it. I think of them as part of the music.
yeah using your voice as an instrument.
Yeah.
Cool. Can I ask you where did Astral Spirits as a name come from? Was that your doing?
It was, well, I didn't come up with the phrase. It's a Joe McPhee song, actually, from Trinity record that he did. And he did it again a couple times in the 80s. But yeah, it's an amazing Joe McPhee song that I've loved. And when I was coming up with the names, he was like, I had also at the same time, of course, put together a list of like my dream artists that I want to release music for. Because why not? And Joe McPhee was one of the top people on the list, and I've been lucky enough to work with him a handful of times now. And he was actually just here in Austin on Saturday and played here, so got to see him, and it was great. Yeah, that's what I'm. Yeah.
All right, well, we're down to the last one. This is Wade in the Water by Conjure Collective.
So this was out last year from the album Blood in My Eye. And this one I wanted to play because it was a split release with Cow Music, which is a new subsidiary of Astral Spirits. And my friend Gabriel Van Landingham Dunn, he runs that, and he helps me with a lot of Astral Spirits stuff too. He's amazing. He's in New York. But this was the first release on Cow Music, and I wanted to give him some props and them some props because they're an amazing group from Baltimore that a lot of people don't know very well. Bashi Rose is drummer, Jamal Moore on saxes, and Sho Azar is the keyboard player, or synths, I should say. It's a really wild record. This is like a heavy record to me. It's wild and loud and just great. But Gabriel's doing amazing things with Cow, and I'm really happy to be helping them along, and I think they're going to do some really cool things beyond Astral Spirit stuff.
Looking forward to it. And here's Wade in the Water by Conjure Collective. And that was Conjure Collective. Before we wrap things up, I always like to ask people what are you listening to right now? What are some artists that might be people you know, might be people you don't know that you feel deserve attention?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That's a tough one. It's a good one. Because I listen to a lot that Actually, right before this, I was listening to Stars of the Lid because RIP Brian McBride passed away yesterday, which is real sad. And yeah, and I've always loved Stars of the Lid. It's part of, I wouldn't say it's part of the reason I moved to Austin, but it was a thing. Like knowing that these two like weird dudes with guitars could make that kind of music it brought me here. It was good. Group I really love it. It's called Soul Tours Taverna, which is SOLTORS Taverna, TAVERNA. They're based in they're from Stockholm, Sweden. They put up this random thing on Bandcamp that I don't even remember how I found out about it, but I just loved it. It's like three sax players, clarinet, piano, bass, and drums. And it's the drummer I found out later who plays in that band Viagra Boys. So it's kind of a weird crossover there in a way. But it's they play at this place in Stockholm called Soul Tours Tavern. It's a tavern that they own and they play in, and it's just really good. Like good, it hits that sweet spot of the like 60s, 70s free jazz, but not too free, but great capital J jazz. And it's been working for me. Listen to that a lot lately. I think, well, this kind of hits both. That hits deserves more attention. And I did one release with him on it. It's Christian Meis Svensson, and I hope I'm saying that correctly. He is a bass player. He was in that band Nakama.
Okay, cool.
So he's in that group. He did a couple records outside of that. There's one called New Rituals, and it's like a 3 CD. It's really long. It's a couple hours long, and it's super repetitive and a lot of chanting. There's a lot of vocals, and there's a whole choir on it, but it's just really beautiful, incredible music. And his playing is just amazing. Because he can go from like crazy free jazz, Paul Nilsson Love kind of group, and I did a tape with him last year that was really, really great. Andres Roysum, yeah, and Creston Osgood. Yeah, he's a player that I don't feel like enough people pay attention to here, in my opinion.
Fabulous.
Those okay?
Hey, those are great.
Got me on the spot. I like that question, but I get overwhelmed because I'm like, there's so much I want to talk about. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you weren't completely overwhelmed. Wow, that's about all the questions I had. Thank you for sitting down with me. Like I said, I've been a big fan of Astral Spirits for a minute, so thank you for giving me the chance to talk to you and pick your brain.
Thank you. Yeah, of course. Cool.
We've been speaking with Nate Cross from Astral Spirits. You can find them on Bandcamp. Is there anything else you would like to plug? Anything coming up? Anything in the pipelines?
There's always stuff. I have a bunch of new releases I just put up for pre-order for this fall. They're all incredible. That Maria Elena Silva, new Mike Reed. And then next year, being the 10-year anniversary, I'm going to do some really special records that I hope everyone will get excited about. That's right.
I know I am. Cool. All right, Nate. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you again.
Yeah, ditto.
And keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks, Will.
And that was my interview with Nate Cross from Astral Spirits. One more time, that was Astral Spirits at Bandcamp. Our tracks for this week have been Vertical Motion by Anthony Davis, Kyle Model, and Kjell Nordsen. Soprano Song by Artifacts. Misty Morning by Sunada. The Human Abstract by Drew Gardner. Orgasm by Chicago Underground Quartet. Love, If It Is So by Maria Elena Silva. Wade in the Water by Conjure Collective. Thank you all so much for listening to this Audible interview. For Audible Sounds, I've been John Hartwell. I'll see you all on the next one.